Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. Sorry about the delay. Janal sir is just logging in a minute. We will get him online. He's just messaged me that he's just trying to log in, some technical issue, I presume. But there's a lot interesting stuff which is happening in Ukraine, which we need to look out at. I'm just going to list out the stuff that we will talk about today. By the time sir just logs in, we are going to talk about a major development with regards to Kim Jong Un from North Korea, wherein there has been news that the Russians have given him an ICBM. Now, an ICBM is an intercontinental ballistic missile which will enable Kim Jong Un from North Korea to hit any American city. Now, that's a major escalation. And as a matter of fact, we've also seen him going into Russia to talk to Putin for a summit level meeting. He traveled in his famous green train and everything like that. Now, that is one major development where we are seeing a shift and probably a second front being opened for the West. You also have President Zelensky, who gave an interview with, I think, Fareed Zakaria from CNN or someone like that. I saw that interview, I forget. But the main crux of the matter that he said, and Sir is here, so let's just get him in. Sirji, good evening. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, hi, good evening. I'm sorry for the
Not a
technical
worry, sir.
issues.
Not a worry, sir. I was just telling the people that we have the North Korean Kim Jong Un is in Russia. He has been handed over a nice little new toy with in terms of an ICBM. Then you also have Zelensky giving an interview with Fareed Zakaria and saying that, oh, we are delayed, we didn't get the help on time, we can't do anything. Basically didn't say the words, but it seemed like an admission of defeat. General Miley gave an interview and he talked about the factor that they've got just about 30 to 45 days of fighting season left, so that leaves a big question open. And finally, there's a major NATO exercise which is happening in the Black Sea, sir. I mean, I wonder why would anybody go in for a wargaming exercise at this time. So welcome to the show, sir, and let's begin wherever you like.
Uh, Good evening, and as always, good to be back on a Thursday evening talking about Ukraine. As has been said, lots has happened. As we know, every week is a interesting week when we look at the happenings in Ukraine and statements coming out of all over the world. As we are all aware, and we've been talking about, this particular war is going to be it's that pivot. We are on a pivotal moment in history wherein the outcome of the war and already things are changing, whether for the good or for the worst, we really cannot say at the moment. But the geopolitical landscape of the entire world is going through a metamorphosis. And now we've had this very interesting visit by the North Korean president visiting Russia. I think it is again something which was kind of unprecedented, which was not visualized by the West, and has created a lot of ripples all over. And people are wondering as to why the hell did he visit and what is he looking at. So this is but natural when you know all those who are against the West are kind of ganging up together. You got you had Russia, China, and now North Korea all ganging up against the West. So-called you know autocracies versus the democracies, if I may just call it in a different metamorphical term. Then, of course, the war, the counteroffensive as such, is not proceeding the way it should. And we've all along been saying that. Uh, the interesting part is that the dynamics have now shifted, as I'd again spoken about it, that Crimea is becoming, or the Black Sea, the battle along in the Black Sea is becoming more and more prominent. And wherein the last yesterday's attack on Sevastopol, wherein a submarine and a landing ship were damaged by about 10 odd Storm Shadow missiles which had been fired. Apparently, seven the Russians claimed that they were able to intercept, but three got through. And then we've also had an S-400 being, kind of
Damaged.
destroyed. So
Mm.
when we look at this, the Ukrainians kind of are feeling are rejoicing over what are the casualties in terms of equipment that the Russians are now suffering at the hands of the Ukrainians. So is the West rejoicing. We will have to wait and watch as to what is going to be the effect of such kind of an attack, and where it will lead. Uh, how will it be retaliated? The land offensive, as we know, not going anywhere. Last 10 days, interestingly, about 2 square kilometers. I mean, 10 days, 2 square kilometers. That's been the progress of the war, and that's the kind of area which has been captured by the Ukrainians. The Russians also, at the same time, I would like to say that the Russians also haven't made much headway towards
Yeah.
the Kupiansk direction. Is it deliberate? Is it deliberately not being pushed? I think it's a part of a plan, and maybe it's the Russians who are waiting and watching as to what exactly is going to happen on the land front.
Mm.
Uh, then what we can see is the grain deal. As far as the Black Sea grain deal is concerned, uh, this is always coming up into the picture, and the Ukrainians are kind of the attacks on the ships, etc., in the Black Sea. Uh, this is being linked kind of the the grain deal part of it. They say that if you weaponize food grains, and this is what is going to happen. Uh, well, we've had Boris Johnson not being very happy with the West because he's the prime
Accused.
he's the prime motivator for this entire war or to have taken place, and he doesn't seem to be apparently happy
Mm.
with the West. And he says that the West is going a little too slow, and I don't know what they are waiting for. So this kind of a thing is happening. As we are aware, the US has provided about $43 billion military aid. I'm talking about, and UK is the number two, which is provided about 4.6 billion worth of equipment, worth of wherewithal, which has been provided by the United Kingdom. That is 4.6 billion pounds. So when we look at all this, well, Elon Musk also came into the entire scene when he made a statement that you know this statement came about 3 4 days back when he said that he had refused activation of the Starlink satellite setup in Crimea. There was an emergency, appeal made to him by the Ukrainians that the Starlink should be activated over Crimea. He says, the moment I came to know that, I did not approve that because I knew uh, that this was directed
Well,
against the Russian fleet. And had he approved it, he would also become an accomplice to this war, which he did not want to. Somehow they say that the Starlink part of it, while it was not activated in the yesterday's strike, they could somehow still manage to hoodwink the Russian, and the Russian setup, and also bypass some of the links and kind of strike. Then you have the defense minister of Russia who gave a statement saying that the Russians are currently following a policy of active defense, and he also said the nothing much has we are waiting and watching, and there is lots lying ahead, and if pushed against the wall, and that they had no option but to win. So this is what it is. Uh, we're watching. Let's see as to what happens in the coming future. Yeah.
Let's start with Kim Jong Un, sir. The big ICBM that he's got, which is a brand new toy. He also got another toy from China, which is the Type 92 submarine. Supposedly a nuclear submarine. I'm not very sure of it. He did a whole tamasha of it. What is happening, sir? The big question that I want to ask you is that the threat in this war is lateral kind of escalation, sir. It won't really, I don't think there's any scope for it to escalate in Ukraine. But lateral escalation is a big threat. I mean, you've got a thing suddenly popping up in Armenia, Azerbaijan. You've got these coups happening in Africa, creating warlike situations. And now the Russians, is this a counter chal, if I may, counter move by the Russians to flip the game?
You see, this entire thing, as I said earlier, is a shift in the geopolitical balance. Now, the global south kind of is awakening up. There's a awakening amongst the global south against the west. They want to get rid of any shackles. They want to be on their own, and they don't want to be held. Uh, hostage. So what has been experienced, in my opinion, is that sanctions, which is always a threat,
Hmm.
that if we do not play along with the West, there would be sanctions, and if sanctions are applied, then the country would go into ruins. Now, this myth has been broken, right? So that fear of sanctions and the fear of being castrated or ostracized, that's the correct word, of being ostracized, the threat is gone. Now, when the threat is gone, the fear is gone, and now anybody is now just ganging up together and saying hell with you. And that's when they say hell with you, they're saying that to the West. Now, as far as Africa is concerned, we've seen what's happening. So there is a resurgence, there's a feeling of nationalhood, there's a feeling of freeing Africa. Your friend Pragoshin had said that he wanted to see a freer Africa. So if I may just say that even though he's not there, Africa is kind of freeing itself from the shackles of
Hmm.
the Europeans. So that's one. Two is that these alliances, whether it's China, whether it's North Korea, and along with Russia. North Korea has always been a rogue state, as has been termed earlier, and that is how it has great amount of sanctions against it. So if you have sanctions against Russia and if you have sanctions against North Korea, it is natural that they are going to gang up together. After all, they're facing the same heat, and they would like to be together and be able to coexist, at least not only coexist, able to help each other out. And that's precisely what is happening. As you said, spreading of the conflict to other zones, whether it is Azerbaijan, Armenia, whether it is in the African nations, whether it is uh, uh, I mean whether it's in Africa or wherever. This is happening because the fear kind of is gone. I have just put it. As far as Korea is concerned, Korea, I mean, a bold move on their part to have come into Russia and taken all the goodies. I mean, he's visited the uh, space station. Obviously, he's looking at sending satellites. That's what has been done. Looking at ICBMs, looking at a submarine, as you mentioned. He's asking for whatever he doesn't have. I mean, he's asking for technology. And what is Russia seeking in return? Apparently, it has been said that they're seeking ammo, which I am not ready to believe. Russia is not seeking ammo. We've had statements being made that the Russian production is 7 times more than the West. Their production from last year to this year has increased. As far as tanks is concerned, earlier they used to manufacture 100 tanks a year. Now they're doing 200 tanks a year. So, as far as ammunition is concerned, they're producing 2 million rounds,
Sheesh.
okay, a year. That's the capacity, 7 times more than the West, and that's increased and it's increased. So, if somebody tells me that he's they're looking for equipment to bleed ammunition from North Korea, I'm afraid not.
Doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense. This getting together is a kind of a threat to the West to say that if you guys think that you can punish us, I am powerful enough, and I have alliances with powerful countries. Now, when I say North Korea is powerful, it's a rogue state. It could do anything.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying powerful. At the same time, it's a statement being made that Russia is relevant in this world. You try and make us irrelevant, sorry, but we are relevant. We are relevant in Africa. We are relevant in the East, and we will continue to remain so. The East, the European, whatever that economic forum which has happened again, which is happening right now, or happened yesterday. That's also to state that I'm all powerful, so don't mess with me. So this is a kind of a statement to say, don't please mess with me. Yeah.
So we've seen the arrogance from President Zelensky and their Ukrainian setup, if I may. I don't call that a government, because day by day I'm losing respect for them because of the way they're treating their own people. Anyway, that's a different story altogether. But the arrogance that he's shown, where he's actually said that if you don't return my people might pick up arms against you in your own countries. They'll be dangerous for you. I mean,
I mean, this is something which is what firstly a was not expected. Secondly, he thinks the world is naive enough to kind of take his threats on. Uh, he is being delusional, is what I would like to say. That as a president of a country which is fighting, he wants the whole world to revolve around him. It doesn't happen that way.
yeah,
You're fighting a war which you could have avoided. You're fighting because uh, I don't, I at the behest of the United Kingdom or the West or whatever you want to say. But the fact of the matter remains, you've taken in so much of money, around 400, or I don't know how many billions of dollars have you consumed, whether in military aid or humanitarian aid or other aid, whatever aid you want to call it, and still not been able to make the effect on ground as was desired by the people who were giving you that kind of money. Now, this arrogance. Now, he says he's warned everybody, especially Europe. I mean, warning Europe. Huh? He says refugees have generally behaved well, and then he warns them. He says it will not be a good story for Europe if it pushes these people onto a corner. I mean, are you trying to? This kind of statements are not welcome, and no same. This is not a street war. This is not a war. This is not a kind of a fight between two neighbors in a township.
correct.
This is these are you have to be mature enough to understand and to make correct statements. No, this kind of a threat is not going to be tolerated by the West. Trust me, as it is, they're quite fed up with this arrogance. Now he says, if you are not with Ukraine, means that you are with Russia. He says either you are with me or without me. There's that famous statement by the United States.
George
Uh,
Bush.
yeah. So he says if you are not with Ukraine, that means you are with Russia.
Wow.
And if you are not with Russia, you are with Ukraine. And then we've had this uh, one of the advisors, what's his name, Portalock, whatever.
Hmm.
He turns around and says that India and China, they better choose. They don't know. They lack intellect. I mean, come on. And then they retract and then they make statements. These kind of statements, I think they're very, very immature diplomats, politicians, whatever you want to call them. And if I may say so, it's frustration kind of setting in. It's fatigue. You know,
Big time.
it's a kind. Yeah, it's fatigue setting in into their minds because they really don't know as to what exactly to do because the war, the counteroffensive is not proceeding. There are no manpower. They're they are now forcing people who are kind of uh, already named. They're all people who are not healthy. They are the ones who are going to be fighting the war for them. So they don't know whether they really don't know. And over and above, they don't know what to do with the money. So that is why corruption is looming. I
There was a
really cannot.
whole line. Kiev Independent put out that report, right? They consider Zelensky responsible for all the corruption, and this is
Yes,
the Ukrainians.
absolutely. So this arrogance is not going to get him anywhere. On the contrary, as it is, people are quite fed up with uh, with his ungratefulness, if I may just put it. You know, if you take it in context to what people have said, NATO has said. One of the lower rung officers had said in NATO secretary, saying that he should be grateful and all that. So I think it's not boding well for Ukraine. Things are not looking good on the political front, diplomatic front, and the military front. I think the only good front, as far as Ukraine is concerned, and they're getting lots and lots of money, which they don't know what to do with. Yeah,
So, I want to peek into the Western strategy in the region, sir. Now, you've
yeah.
got reports about them talking to the Finns about putting some missiles in Finland, which initially the Finns were saying no. Then you've got reports about the factor that they are wanting to do these war games in uh, the Black Sea. But generally speaking, sir, there is a notion which I've been kind of pondering on to and request your comments on this, please. That the main strategy of the West, as we discussed some time ago, was basically to freeze the conflict somehow, freeze it up. Now, just by dragging this thing on, they have brought it to the point where in 30, 45 days, there's going to be rains, Rasputitska, as per se. Then it's going to be too cold to fight. And, it comes down to next year. So that gives them the grace time to rebuild whatever is left of it. They after so much of counter offensive thing, they built up 60,000. I don't know what they'll build up now. Is the West pushing towards a frozen conflict? Okay, just hold the battle lines, slow down the shooting, bring it down to a point where we can start talking. Of course, I don't think they're taking into the consideration what the Russians would do. How do you kind of picture this as a strategy from the West?
See, as far as the West is concerned, a frozen conflict was we've spoken about it earlier also.
Yes, sir.
I I I just want to make this thing clear. There's a lot of confusion. A At times the West turns around and says that Russia is not keen to stop the war. Right? Russia is always saying you
Let's
ask them
talk.
to change their thought process, and you tell them as to ask Ukraine whether it wants to stop the war or not.
Yeah.
Russia says we are ready to negotiate if Ukraine is ready to negotiate. But Ukraine has and the NATO and the West, they have been always harping upon that the terms and conditions laid down by them are the basis for stopping the war or negotiating. Now that we all know is not happening. The return of all the captured territories, the return of Crimea, etc., are the conditions which the Ukrainians are making. That's not going to happen. Does the West West has thrown a lot of feelers to tell Ukrainians and to tell the world that look, it might as well stop the war in as is basis, as is where is, and then start negotiating. There are feelers to that. Nobody wants to come out directly and say that for fear of being again condemned later on by the Ukrainians or by anybody else. So they're waiting for the winters. Now, if you think the war is going to freeze in the winters, no. I just want to draw your attention to what is happening. The war has kind of shifted to more of a non-contact war. It's not a contact. What contact lines are not moving. As you said, 10 days, 2 square kilometers, not much of headway. Whether the Russians have moved forward deliberately or otherwise, uh, they are also not moving forward. So if the contact lines are not moving, the contact lines are kind of already frozen. What is happening and is more causing more damage are the long range missiles, are the drones, which are being launched on either side on the cities, whether it's Kiev or whether on Moscow or whether on the other cities in Ukraine, whether it's the ports where the missiles are being launched. So this kind of a war will continue, in my opinion, throughout the winter as well, whether it is a harsh winter or a whatever a mild winter, because this has to be fought from a greater distance. We're talking about 60, 70 minimum kilometers when the drones will go and
Right.
hit,
Hmm.
right? So the war or the conflict is not, in the true sense, is not going to get frozen. So make the statement again: lines are not moving, contact lines are not moving, contact lines are kind of frozen already. This khitchpitch, this small kind of skirmishes, if I may just put it, will,
Plugging matches.
yeah, yeah, it may not happen to the scale as which is happening today because of the snow and because of difficulty of movement, but the non-contact will carry on. You will have I don't know whether about a month back or so it said it will now shift to the Black Sea, and that's precisely what is happening, right? So the war has already shifted to the Black Sea. As far as NATO is concerned, and you mentioned all these exercises taking place, well, all these exercises are firstly, they are all annual features. Secondly, they are planned in advance. Thirdly, they are executed to show strength. Fourthly, they are actually carried, uh, you know, are done for a lot of coordination which is required. So it's a kind of a show of force. It's a kind of a rehearsal. It's kind of a training maneuver which is required to be carried out from time to time. Should the war escalate to a situation, then all the NATO countries must collaborate together, must be able to, fight together.
Hmm.
So this, yeah, these are preparations. The timing of which really has no relevance, in my opinion, as of now. But yes, it's a kind of a threat in being to show that we are preparing for any eventuality which may take place subsequently. Yeah.
So the question still remains: what is Putin waiting for? I mean, I'm not able to figure out. Either he's waiting for, I again, it's either the economic collapse. Ki bhai, let's wait for them to kind of dump down as it is. They're going. ठीक है, why let them completely collapse? Either he's waiting for the Ukrainian military effort to go. Now, herein, I'd like you to comment on that notification which has gone to all some of these European countries where they have to send back their Ukrainian refugees, and we've seen these letters floating around all over the place now. So, what is Putin waiting for, sir? Is he waiting for the complete surrender, complete breakdown of the military, and then he'll just walk? I'm not
Yeah.
able to picture, because there has to be some pressure from the army saying, "Sir, let's finish this. Sir. What are we doing?"
I agree with you. The army would, must be putting pressure, saying that we got to put an end to all this. Enough is enough. After all, fatigue sets in on on either side. So let's face facts. There is a fatigue factor which would have set in, but the ability of the Russians to rotate troops exists. So troops get rotated from the front. Whenever there is a pause in battle, fresh troops are brought in, older troops, they are rotated. So that kind of rotation is a part of uh, such kind of prolonged battles, right? It's not the same soldier who's fighting and fighting and fighting. It's not like what's happening on the Ukraine front. On the Ukraine front, rotation is an issue because of lack of manpower. Whereas on the Russian
Manpower.
front, that's not an issue. Yeah. So the availability of manpower amongst the Russian on the Russian side is much more. We all do understand that. Now Russia has got about 420,000 troops engaged in this operation right now. 420,000 troops. So that's the scale. Earlier, they used to say it was about 500,000, but now they've come down to a figure of 420,000. Now, you ask me as to what is Putin waiting for? I think Putin is now kind of not looking this side, if I may just put it bluntly.
Playing the big
He's
game,
not
sir.
much worried. He's not much worried. Yes, yesterday's strikes and last night's strike and then
Hmm.
four strikes would have an effect, and we will see as to what their retaliation is. But he is a strong nation. He's not fighting Ukraine. He's fighting the West. The West has not committed its troops. When the West has not committed its troops, it hasn't committed its entire equipment.
Why should he?
Putin, why should he? And Putin has to conserve his armed forces. I've been stating that on many occasions. He has to conserve his troops. He has to conserve his equipment. He has to build up his equipment. He has to be able to fight the main enemy, and the main enemy is the West. The West means NATO forces plus United States, right? So as of now, he's letting them fight and die the way they are. He's waiting for the West to exhaust its equipment and exhaust its reserves to such a degree that they are kind of weakened. Economically, he's looking at Europe kind of collapsing, which is happening. Politically, he's also waiting for all the results of the elections, which is going to happen. As far as his elections are concerned, 2024, he doesn't have any opponent, and so that's a foregone conclusion. He's waiting for the effect the United States elections are going to have. So he is not wanting to sacrifice his troops uh, at the moment,
Hmm.
and rightly so. I mean, it's not a do or die situation for him as of now. So his focus of attention is
That makes sense.
West. Yeah. So he not kind of uh, you know I would say he's not flustered. So they're fighting. There's a fight going on. Fight has come to a stage that okay, there are a little bit of they'll occupy a little territory, we'll occupy a little territory, and this one will carry on. Keep inflicting damage onto the infrastructure. While Ukraine is saying that they've been able to source their energy resources for the winter from other countries, and that their infrastructure is quite okay and is not going to have much effect. Winter is not going to have much effect on them. We shall see that. Second way of looking at it is he's waiting for the commitment of the entire troops. The moment Ukraine has committed all its troops, he's going to let them have it. Once the winter has come, it's frozen, the battle lines are frozen. That's the time he will let them have it again through artillery, through missile attacks, through drone attacks, right? And as it is, there's going to be a food shortage. So that
Hmm.
kind of situation is what he's waiting for. He's waiting for things to go bad, and he's not wanting to commit his troops at all.
Why fight a war if you can win without fighting it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Why fight? Absolutely. You know?
And he's not losing anything. I mean, it's not that he's kind of economically weakening or.
No, no, no. He is strengthening himself. He's looking at. He's learned very quickly from his mistakes, from the initial mistakes, and I think they must be sitting down together, having a drink and laughing at the West. You know, what are these guys doing? Like, I mean, what have they got into? They got themselves into a mess. So, not a good sign as far as the entire world is concerned, because things becoming dangerous by the day.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
the use of cluster munitions, the use of depleted uranium, the supply of ATCMS, the ATAMS, whatever they call them, these long range missiles which are likely to come from the United States.
attackums,
Yeah,
attackums.
yeah. So all these missiles coming in, and F-16s whenever they come in. So the war is going to get prolonged. I just always maintain another year, 2 years, not happening, not finishing before that, and it'll continue. And the biggest sufferer in this, other than the Ukrainians, are going to be the Europeans. Just remember this. Not it doesn't affect United States health. It's affecting the
Yeah,
entire
they'll
of Europe.
just dust off and walk off.
Yeah, because the US is a big nation. US is a powerful nation with its focus on China, and they're just giving money, and that money is, I mean, peanuts as to what they can afford. So this proxy war of the United States and the West, the biggest sufferer, other than the Ukrainians, are going to be the Europeans. Now, as far as the refugees being sent back, not every country is going to be doing that because they have their own laws.
Yeah,
Uh,
become otherwise
Germany,
war crimes.
yeah, yeah. So that's not happening. I imagine extraditing people. You just because you're Ukrainian, you go and fight in your country.
Yeah,
Yeah, not happening. First, you let them in, then you get them together and send them back. Uh, Not really. Then, of course, the other thing that is happening on ground is the no Russian vehicle with a Russian number
mm,
plate is being permitted in many countries like Estonia,
EU. Yeah,
Lithuania. Interestingly, Finland has said, "Sorry, we are not going to put an embargo on this. We will permit." So there is a kind of uh, frustration. There is a kind of uh, dissent which is growing up in Europe. You remember
mm.
those 4 or 5 countries which refused to allow Ukrainian grain, and
Poland is number one.
yeah, and Ukraine having the audacity that we will go to WTO and we'll challenge you in the court and all that. I mean, I think it's very immature. This whole thing is showing them as a very immature nation, and
Nation, sir.
there yeah.
I mean, I'm asking, sir. Nation, seriously, sir. You've upgraded. It's an American outpost with Ukrainian speaking people. Uh,
Yes, but at the same time, this kind of, as they say, that it is not the 51st state of the United States, but there is a lot
with
of
no,
resentment coming about in United States also.
yeah,
I mean,
about,
after all,
yeah.
taxpayers' money which is being used, and it hasn't been used. They haven't been able to justify the use.
My last question, and after that we'll get into the loads and loads of questions which are here. Guys, like Shaikh, सबसे पहले यार, uh, we're going to be what 240 likes. We can pull that up a little more, another 100 probably. We've got the scope, so please like this video. Very important. Sir, what I want to ask you about, and See, sir, the Americans today are in a place where I now, we promised the audience that we'll look at the overall geopolitic of things as well. You know, ऊपर से भी देखना शुरू करेंगे. That's why for the first time I brought in Kim. So we kind of focus towards Asia as well. So we'll slowly diverge into that. But I want to focus on America today. What's happening with Joe Biden? I mean, he's being indicted. They're probably going to stick the Ukraine war on his backside and kick him out. That's what's going to happen. And that's just my opinion right now. I'm just trying to figure out why suddenly, after 3 years of him being a president, all the things that he did are not okay today. Suddenly, everything. No, 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 this is not okay. That's weird. That means that there is a shift there in the political thinking. You have voices now coming out which are saying, okay, I think we need to quit Ukraine. So a lot of people are saying that. What's the game happening in America? So because that's where the story is going to start. Blinken
You
went,
see,
by the way. Sorry, but Blinken also went to Ukraine. What did he do, sir? Have French fries and with a very sad face, not a very positive, happy sort of a look, which normally is very aggressive. It was very calm, polite, and the Ukrainian foreign minister was standing there like that.
see, as far as the US is concerned, now President Biden, we all do understand, has gotten old. Let's face facts, and we've seen his mental health, if I may just put it, weakening. And you're the president of the United States. Good, very nice. But are you able to lead effectively? I think this this part of it is suffering. So the leadership, uh, effective leadership, is what today is suffering as far as the US is concerned. And who's calling the shots? One really wonders, because they do talk about BlackRock, Vanguard, and all these people making it, calling the shots. So now they are talking about impeaching him. And why are they talking about impeaching him? It's because of his relation, of his son's uh, deals with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Now, even the Ukraine war started, so there was something. He's been on a board of a few companies here and there. Now, with all that happening, uh, there are reasons for the Republicans, which they have found that there are grounds for the impeachment proceedings to start. Now, on one side, you have had Trump being put behind bars and being arrested. So they find, okay, fine. If you found faults in Donald Trump, well, you are not saint either. So
Hmm.
this kind of a thing is happening on as far as the US is concerned. Putting the entire blame of Ukraine onto President Biden, I don't think so. Uh, because these going to war, etc., are policy decisions. Uh, they are not made, and all this has been carrying on since 2014 and even before. So this war was inevitable, and Russia, as we are aware, was pushed into doing what it has done, right? And interestingly, Russia is the one which is being blamed to have caused a war, to have tried to capture territory. So all those who have followed all this know exactly as to this was all brewing up, and this with adequate warnings given by Russia that don't do this, don't do this. They tried to explain to them that they need to make adjustments. Anyway, I'm not getting into all that. The point here is today they're looking for an exit.
Yeah. Off ramp.
Yeah. So when you're looking at an exit, change of a president is a nice excuse.
Yep.
So
We'll
you
deal
change
with
the
you after the
president.
elections. Hmm.
Yeah, we deal with you after the elections. So that's the game, and put the blame on the guy who's gone. and then try and start afresh, because this one is going nowhere. It was a bad gamble. At times it was a bad deal. It was a bad hand at the cards table. So you need to redeal your cards. So this is what is kind of happening. And I won't say read much into linking the removal of the president uh, to the war as such, but more so, I would say that yes, domestic politics is playing its part in dirty politics is playing its part in the United States circle. Uh, in democracies, they say, in democracies, you will always have such kind of games being played, and it is not so neat as people think it is. Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. So, would there be anything else that we've missed out for the week before we get into the questions?
Okay, just let me just check. Uh, yeah, as we said, what's happening in the Black Sea. We've had some oil, you know, rigs which have been captured. About four oil rigs have been captured by the Ukrainians. These are all they were lying defunct, but they've been taken over. And the latest one which was taken over was the Bokyotars that came into this thing. And I guess that's about it. We have the Romanians cribbing about talking about the debris falling into there, but a very correct statement. It says nobody has attacked Romania.
Yeah.
When the NATO was pushing and trying to tell them that it is a breach of airspace or whatever it is, the Romanians turned around and said yes, debris has fallen on 3 4 occasions, but nobody has directly attacked Romania. So that's something which is very very encouraging.
Well, sir, nobody wants to fight. I think the Polish also, you can see the Polish, the pre-election polls were talking about it. Almost 55, 60, 58% of the country says you can keep supporting it. We are not fighting this nonsense. Keep
Yeah,
us
yeah.
away from this. So
You see,
that's,
earlier everybody was gung ho.
yeah.
You know, throw the Russians out, Russians this, Russians that. Now everybody is buying Russian oil. Even Ukraine is buying Russian oil. You know that, right? So if Ukraine is also buying Russian oil and is fighting using Russian oil, so there's something very very drastically wrong in this entire war.
By the way,
So
Russia is still paying Ukraine for those pipelines, huh? You know that, right?
yeah, so all this
What is this
is a
nonsense? I
hogwash.
mean,
This proxy war, uh, it's actually in the true spirit of proxy war, wherein one country has been made to sacrifice God knows how many lives. I mean, it's not funny. 400,000 or killed, not funny. This is not funny at all. And a kind of generations been which have been removed from the
finished,
face of the earth,
finished, finished.
and God knows where are they going to find the who's going to habitate come and stay in Ukraine after it is rebuilt by Europe.
Backlog.
Yeah.
Let's get into the audience questions. There's loads of questions, loads of comments. Uh, I think honestly, we would find a hot war pretty intriguing to discuss. But I think this point of the war is more intriguing because there's a lot of politique, backdoor politique involved in this entire game. It's not as simple as it looks. That nothing is moved on the ground. Yaar, kuch nahi ho raha Ukraine mein. It's not that. The escalation and actually the lateral, as we were discussing, the lateral expansion of the war is going on to multiple fields. It's playing out everywhere except the G20, thankfully. But it did play out here also with Macron refusing Russian journalists to be entered into his room and all that when he was giving a, it's damn silly that these kind of things are happening, sir.
Yes, G20. I think it was very clear that Ukraine was not going to be discussed after
Yeah,
an invite was not forwarded, because again, as I said in the initial this thing, you the President Zelensky thinks he's the He's he's the key man in the entire world politics. I'm afraid so. It is not. There are many other things which take place in this world. So
He's
G20 is kind of, it put them in the right place.
absolutely. So, guys, let's take in your questions. As I said, don't forget to like this video. If you've not subscribed, subscribe. This Ukraine update, and I think I'm going to call it the Global Geopolitic Update every Thursday night with General Prabdeep Singh, where we'll talk a little more freer, slow, and steady of the Ukraine war, and of course the politics around it. So please do like, subscribe, spread the message. If you can, you if you can, please do contribute towards my effort. The QR code for direct contribution is up there, or you can join in as a member or send in a super sticker or super chat. Firstly, getting into the audience, firstly, I mean, if you don't mind, I'd like to just take a moment to express my regret for the three lives lost in JNK. That is something which is, it's terrible at a time like this where I think the nation was, happy, and then we get this terrible news.
This gentleman, the colonel, was one of my company commanders when I was commanding a division. So
Ah,
it's very sad. Plus the battalion that is there, I've served with them alongside. So it's quite sad. Yeah.
you knew him personally.
I didn't know him personally as such, but yes, he was one of my officers. He was one of my company commanders. His battalion was directly under me.
God bless them and their families. That's all I would say. The first one, sir, Jagpreet ji asks, General Behr, sir, Zelensky is threatening Europe. If not help more, Ukrainian refugees will cause trouble. What do you make of this threat, hollow or real? And may I add, sir, would this
Yeah.
create a situation where the Americans will have to go back in and fight? Because that's what they did in Afghanistan. First armed them and then they went to thrash them. So,
Yes. Firstly, A, this threat is hollow. B, none of the Ukrainians want to go back to Ukraine. Earlier, they were, wanting to go and settle elsewhere, and they the opportunity came, so they moved to the rest of the world, and they are not there to cause problems. They're there to save their family and to make a life. So this threat, and they don't really care about what is happening back home, because they do understand in hindsight that this war could have been avoided. So this threat is hollow. Second, you just stated, would the Americans go and fight? Would NATO get into it? Already we all know that there are a lot of non-Ukrainian troops on ground. We are, we are aware that you have intelligence operatives. We, uh, we are all aware that if an equipment is provided, there will always be somebody who is there to train them to ensure that they you know use it properly.
properly.
uh, they are there when the intelligence has to be downloaded. So there are foreign troops on ground. Let's get that right. And we've also had reports of so many of them dying, and all that, attack on a hotel and stuff like that. So, but the day it gets confirmed that these are uniformed soldiers on ground, then there is going to be a little bit of trouble. And if that happens, the dynamics would change. Today we have had Storm Shadow missiles being used against the submarine, the sinking of the submarine on in Sevastopol, not the sinking, the damaging of the submarine and the damaging of the landing craft, Rostov on the. So
Rostam on.
on Don. So if this kind of a thing is going to happen, actually the West has got no locus standi telling other nations not to provide assistance to Russia. they've made a statement. The Americans have made a statement that there will be harsher and more sanctions against the US, correction, the against Russia and North Korea.
What
If
else?
North Korea provides any, I mean, they lived through sanctions, man. The threat of
For them, it's
sanctions,
a joke.
it's kind of a joke as far as these two countries are concerned. So we can provide, but you can't provide. I mean, that doesn't hold good. So let's see as to where it leads the war to. Yeah.
Is it that the world interest in the war is an issue of diminishing returns for the West? Interesting.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a good statement to make. The returns, you know, actually, ironically, as I've already spoken, they're looking at rebuilding Ukraine. There are two aspects. There are two aspects. One aspect is the military industrial complex. You say, take as many weapons that you want, as many equipment that you want, provide ammunition, provide this, provide that, provide tanks, provide F-16s. That's the military industrial complex. The other side is BlackRock and Vanguard and all that. Okay, cause a lot of destruction, cause a lot of destruction. I have to go and rebuild. So actually, returns are not diminishing it. It could be increasing interests, not increasing returns.
These monkeys will get paid from one side, and when this
Yeah,
thing dries up, they'll get paid from the other side. So,
correct. That's how they recycle that dollars.
I mean, it's really amazing. This is an interesting statement. Sir Jayashree ma'am says Boris is as much as an expert on defense as he's on virology.
Yeah, just look at his face, and then you'll know as to how he's another clown. When two clowns meet, then this is what happens.
Ask Ms. General, sir, what would be the highest kinetic action that Russia can take to end this war below the nuclear threshold, unleash its full air force potential, or will it be only the slow kill approach?
Absolutely a slow kill approach. Now, for reasons I've just told you, wanting to conserve its own power, he's not fighting Ukraine, he's fighting the West. Just remember this. Russia is not fighting Ukraine. Ukraine is a proxy, which will the war will be fought till the last Ukrainian. But when will be the first European coming into the battle? That is what we got to watch for, and that is what Russia is watching. So it's a slow slogging match.
I mean, it's an amazingly slow slogging match. JP, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your contribution. General sir, एक संदेश in Nepali, to Russia, Ukraine, please. I don't know what that means.
So you want to know? You want me to speak Nepalese? Okay. के भनौँ यो युक्रेनको वरलाई कहीँ पनि जान्दैन सबै यो अमेरिकाको खेल छ यो and not going to
Not,
lead anywhere.
not
So
bad, not bad.
he wanted me to speak in Nepalese.
Sanaska Varanasi, thank you so much for your super sticker. And Manjari, madam, thank you so much for your super sticker. Deepak, sir, the emotional blackmail Ukrainians indulge in against us, Durgama cartoon calling us unintelligent. Do they have the bravado to do this against the Chinese who helped Russia militarily? They've done that.
Yeah, Deepak, what you got to understand is India. I normally don't talk India, but we, as a nation, diplomatically, economically, politically, are very always very correct in whatever we do, and this is something that you got to be very proud of. Which unfortunately others find it difficult to comprehend. If you
Hmm.
can comprehend India, then you can comprehend. If you read Arthashastras, only then you will be able to comprehend India. So our Chanakyagiri is beyond anybody else's comprehension.
तो उसको
So
obviously समझ नहीं
that's
आ रही.
uh, so when they do not understand the Indian psyche, some of the immature nations, they try to mock at us. Would they do that with China? Well, they do that with China also, right? And China is taken for granted as being an enemy, if I may just put it. Whereas India, they expect, they refer to India as one of our swing states. It's neither here nor there. Just remember, we are not a swing state. We are a state we are a nation which is absolutely correct in its dealings, and it when we deal or we act taking the merits of a particular issue at hand. We study that thing and we are very careful with what we do. We do not take sides just because we want to take side with a particular country or with a particular ideology. We take sides based on merits, and that is the biggest, uh, I would say, our this is our biggest strength, and it has been so all along.
Yeah.
That is why we've been non-aligned. That's why we exercise strategic autonomy, etc., etc. So be very proud of the fact that we are all Indians, and our polity, our diplomacy is absolutely correct when it comes to dealing with such cases. So let anybody mock, let anybody do anything. We're always right.
Partha says, did you hear Blinken saying old world order is no more? Some in US think new world order is a communist takeover. They don't seem to get the difference between unipolar and multipolar.
Yeah, because they have a unipolar mindset and they feel that they are far superior to the rest of the world and that everybody else must kind of obey
Adhere.
and listen and believe in what they say. Unfortunately, it's not happening that way. Multipolar, it is very much a multipolar world. You have so many alliances, so many groups, so many groupings which have mushroomed. You have the BRICS, you have the OPEC, you have the AUKUS, you have the you know the Western AUKUS. I don't know what not. So when you have such you have the G20, you have the G7, you have the ASEAN, you have so many groupings taking place, and every group when a grouping like this happens, and there is what do you call when these groupings are talking together, a common language, it definitely implies a multipolar world. So today, if India is part of BRICS, it's there in SCO, it's part of AUKUS, and it's part of anything and everybody. I mean, it's here also, it's there also.
Yeah.
It's all multipolar, and it's
Right.
not very difficult to understand actually. Yeah.
We can speculate direct involvement of the reported destruction of S-400 battery, presumably as a payback for the destruction of the Patriot missile battery earlier by the Russians.
No, I wouldn't say that it's a payback. Uh, the the Americans are directly involved in providing intelligence. You will be surprised that uh, as far as the intelligence community is concerned, we can in real time pinpoint each and every asset.
Hmm.
The issue is not getting the intelligence. You've got satellite imagery, you've got aerial photography, you've got electronic intelligence, you've got I mean, all sorts of different forms of intelligence. You've got ground intelligence, uh, satellite, you know, electronic warfare. The whole gambit is when you start talking about it. So nothing gets hidden. Choosing the right weapon for the right target, the ability to strike at the right time, at the right chosen time, with the right equipment is what is critical. If these assets are not moving, if they are stationary for 24 hours, they'll get hit. And to move, say, an S400 battery uh, from one location to the other location, I really do not know because I have not handled that. But I'm sure they change their location in a specific timings. No RT gun. When an RT gun fires, there you fire a RT gun, you will have CB, that is counter bombardment, taking place within seconds. Why will that happen? Because the radar would have picked up your exact location the moment the fire takes place. It would have triangulated and in return would fire. So if you don't fire and scoot, uh,
You'll get hit.
you're done. That's a part of maneuver. When a tank fires, after it fires, it moves. The infantry also does simple fire and move tactics. One leg on the ground. You don't stay stationary because the moment you are stationary, you will be had. So it, it's a very battlefield is all very transparent, and it's how you tackle that particular
Game
asset or
sometime.
battle
Yeah,
piece of
yeah.
equipment. So it's not a retaliation. They would have picked it up in any case.
Jagpreet says,
Yes.
sir, I heard
Because,
Ukraine are using decoys made of cheap pipes, inflatables, and to exhaust Russian drones and ammunition. Will Russia fall into such traps, or their detection is so poor? Detection is so poor.
all right. Now, well, I also read about it. Decoys are part of the
Warfare.
all battlefield strategy. So every country, every in all battles, in all wars, decoys are used. And trust me, I don't want to get into it. These are part of deception. The deception plans are very exhaustive. They are made with a purpose, and they exist. So if you somebody says that this is not happening, this is happening. Why does it happen? Basically to deceive. And we even go to the extent, I'll just make it clear to you, we even go to the extent of putting, you know, electric stoves, or we burn stoves in this to radiate heat signatures. All right. So it's just not putting it there. When you put up a decoy, you have to set up a communication system. You have to make sure that heat, the infrared radars, infrared, all that can get picked up. So thermal radiation takes place. There's electronic radiation takes place. All that happens. So it's a very intricate deception. Is kind of a very intricate process. It happens in the battlefield, and it is with the aim of deceiving the enemy to exhaust. I mean, obviously, they're going to fire at it, and they will exhaust. So this is part of the entire strategy.
Adisura says, what sort of an effect will defection cause? Recently, a Mi-8 pilot defected to Ukraine. We have heard of similar cases from both the sides. Whose perception is real? Whose troops are disoriented?
You see, this deception when you're referring to that Me-8, helicopter pilot going across and defective. Who defects? A person who defects. If you have read about it, you would have read that he was paid a couple of $1,000, $100,000 to defect. So again, all is fair in love and war. So this kind of
Stuff happens.
inducing defection with a particular piece of equipment always happens. I remember a long time back we had aircraft called Foxbat, MiG-25 or something. It's called
Yes, sir.
Foxbat. A Russian pilot had defected
Yuri,
along with the aircraft.
Yuri something. He landed in Japan.
Yeah, this was way in the 80s, if I'm not right, late 80s. So
70s.
Foxbat, 70s, 80s. So that was the first case of big case of a Russian pilot who are defected. And
Right, the Israelis stole the MiG-21 from the Egyptians.
so these kind of things, defections will always take place. And a Mi-8 has nothing much to defect with, by the way.
Hmm.
And it's the lure of money, or it's disgruntlement, or
I mean, I'm wondering, Mi-8 se kya karenge? It's pretty. Nobody uses the damn thing anymore.
no, it's not much of a deal, but it has happened.
Maitriyas, Janasa, I feel like Russians pretty much achieved what they wanted. Warm water ports, two land, three began the end of and the West, four Africa, $5 billion of dollars in minerals. What are your takes?
You
That's
summed
a
it up
roundup.
so beautifully, Maitri.
That's a
And
roundup.
yeah, you're looking at warm water ports, land, end of the de-dollarization, Africa. Russia actually has gained by this war. Whether it was done with a purpose, I don't think it was done purpose. All this has happened uh, as a result of the Western obstinacy, if I may just put it. Now you start making statements that Russia has to be kind of finished. So obviously, if you tell your enemy that I'm going to sort you out in the next couple of years, so what does the enemy do? And if the threat is real, then you start making preparations for it. And when you make preparations, you're very serious about what you do, and you tend to gain maximum. And I think this is a result of all this. And yeah, they've been highly successful and beautifully summed up. Thanks,
The pilot's name was Victor Belenko.
Victor. Yeah, most of them are victors in any case.
I know. I mean, 1976, December 6th.
Yeah, that's why I
So,
remember I was in school somewhere. I mean,
yeah,
the Foxpart
major
became a big issue at
household
that
name.
particular.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Last few, sir, Dipankar says they only keep saying two things: we must defeat the Russians and Putin must be taken down. That speaks their mindset.
absolutely, Dipankar. They've been talking about, the premise of the whole thing of this entire war is there will be an uprising in Russia. There has to be regime change, which we have to bring about. We have to kind of what do you call sort out Russia in a manner economically. Unfortunately, none of that has happened. Again, I
Yeah,
would say it's a big intelligence failure. The strategic intelligence community or the advisors who are there advising, whether it's the United States or the NATO, they were failed in their assessment. It's a terrible failure because the premise is regime change. Fortunately, unfortunately for them, Russia was also talking about regime change in Ukraine, right? You're talking about denazification. Here they're talking about de-Russification. In the end, what has happened is de-Europeanization or de-NATOization. So this is what is going to be the end result, where NATO is going to become defunct. Europe Union is as it is bickering and fighting. Yes,
it's a terrible scenario, as a matter of fact, sir. Adi Sura once again asks, I wonder if Putin is the one who's waiting for winters. Do the Russians have any chance of launching an effective counter under the eyes of General Winter? Maybe at the end of it.
nada, no, no, not waiting for winters. They know that, as I said, the contact part of it is not going anywhere, and non-contact warfare will continue. And you will have strikes. You will have a lot of activity in the Black Sea, and that is where my worry lies. That this particular land warfare will freeze, but this sea warfare, the naval warfare, that's going to take a greater importance in the winters. The war will just shift its direction.
That's a scary scenario. Kun asks, sir, General sir, how true are the Russian allegations, rumor of chemical weapons production in Ukraine with the help of the US?
I really cannot say. I mean, these chemical weapons have always been a dicey subject.
It's
This
been
is a
used.
subject all United Nations Convention on Chemical Weapons, etc. Now, half of these countries which are producing chemical weapons and biological weapons are not signatories to it, right? So, if chemical weapons are being produced in Ukraine, I won't be surprised. One, because when Ukraine was part of the USSR, such facilities did exist, and so they may have been revived or they were already kind of active, and they were passive and now made active by the United States. So I would go with the rumors, but will chemical weapons be deployed? Will chemical weapons be used? Well, I have my doubts. Not really. They are used, but will they use it now? I have my doubts. Yeah.
Akshat says, have there been reports that Russia has been successful in various subversion tactics in America with the advent of neoliberalism in America? Could the threat of Russia be the reason?
Yeah, I mean, if you stayed in the US, you'll find that a lot of Russian dominated businesses which exist. And yes, to an extent, I would put it yes. If you ask me whether I'm sure, I'm not sure. But there is, if you stay, as I said, in the US, you will find that there is a lot of Russian dominance in many spheres. If you look at the dockyards, over the maximum people working in the dockyards in the United States are the Russians and the Poles. Okay, so there is a kind of lobbying which the Jewish lobby, the Russian lobby, which are very very strong, which exist in the United States. So this could be, I mean, one of the causes.
So,
Yeah,
last one. Ishan, thanks so much for your contribution. Jayan sir, I think the entire world has realized who really has the weak intellectual potential. It's the morons who are supporting the comedian and his masters.
yeah, absolutely, Ishan. I mean, these kind of statements, are not appreciated by anybody, and everybody knows as to what India is all about. And the success of G20 is something which has not been digested by Ukraine, and hence these kind of statements which have come about. And the fact that they were not invited, the fact that Ukraine was not kind of discussed in this, has antagonized them.
No,
And
obviously.
so it's only, I think these are
Only
statements of frustrated individuals.
it's all right. It's all right. Let them be.
Yeah,
Let them have their day in the sun.
absolutely.
Doesn't really matter. Sir, thanks so much. This has again been a fantastic episode as promised. You've kind of stolen the show once again with your analysis, and I'm grateful that you take out the time every week to kind of educate us as to what's the greater geopolitic which is going to take place in the world. Guys, Thursday nights, we're going to be expanding the horizon of this show. Please remember that. We will be talking about some more international affairs, some more international global politics, what's happening in the east, west, north, and south, because everywhere there seems to be a spark which might just ignite into a fire. So I'm not looking for that fire, but if there is one, we shall be there to analyze it and see how will it affect the world. To sir, once again, sir, thank you so much for your time and the analysis. See you next week, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you very much. Thanks, viewers. See you guys.